Yeah, I had a guy try to stick me up. I was selling pot and shit, and big dude, and I had like $1,000 on me, and that was like back in 1974, when $1,000 was a decent amount of money. And this motherfucker.
Welcome to the Passing Through Podcast, a show dedicated to exploring those spaces not just within, but also between and around us. The cracks in the walls, the moments between the moments, the silence that stitches a song together. This isn't a podcast about answers or about fixing the world. It's a space for listening, for slowing down and sitting in the unknown to see what might surface in the stillness. So there are two things that I want to talk to you about in this episode. The first is my recent trip to Portugal with my father, and the second is what happened when I came back. My partner Asha and I held our first community building workshop on our own. For longtime listeners of this show, you may know that my partner Asha and I are facilitators in a community building method. And at the end of last year, after years of training, we received our certification to be full-fledged facilitators. I'm going to pause right here at the beginning and just say that I'm a bit sick. You might hear it in my voice. It's a little bit nasally, and I have a little bit of brain fog. So I guess I somehow caught something in the air on the way back from Portugal, and I'm on the mend. So bear with me for any unseemly pauses or things that become incoherent. There's not going to be much editing for this episode. I may talk fast. I've been spending 2 weeks with my father in Portugal, so the fast-talking New Yorker energy may appear. So let me begin by talking about Portugal, because another thing you should know is that I'm recording this from the van right now, and it is about 3:30 in the afternoon, and it is sweltering in this van. It's like a sauna in here. I just had to take my shirt off. So envision this, a sweaty man in the back of a van. I'm actually parked by a playground, recording this for you. So let's hope no one saw me go into the back of the van, because if the police are on the way and they see me with no shirt on in front of recording equipment near a playground, this may be the last time you hear from me for a while. But let's put all of that aside for a moment and talk about Portugal. So in Portugal, I decided that it would be good to go there for my 40th birthday and spend some time with my father. There were other options. I was thinking of taking a workshop with David Abram in Italy. I was thinking of going to Hawaii to spend some time with Josh Schrei and the Emerald folks. So I had a whole bunch of things that were swirling around my head to experiment with to commemorate this milestone of 40 years, which is nothing to be proud of, in my opinion. It just means that my bones ache. I can blow my back out when I bend down to tie my shoe. If I sneeze wrong, I may blow my lung out. It's not nice to be 40. On the other hand, if we listen to the sagely wisdom of our friend, the beloved Carl Jung, he says, everything before 40 is just research. So let's hope our friend Carl is right. Back to Portugal. So I'm in Portugal with my father because I figured he's over 70. His days are numbered. Who knows how much longer he's going to be here, and our relationship hasn't been rock solid for most of my life. In fact, my relationship with my father has always been a contentious one, so it's been challenging. And so spending some time together before he's gone on a day that I will always remember seemed to me a way to help facilitate some healing or some bonding or some connection. or at the very least, have some amazing stories for the legendary arguments that would erupt while being with my father for 2 weeks nonstop 24/7. There's that famous quote from Ram Dass where he says, if you think you're enlightened, go and spend a week with your parents. And so I don't think I'm enlightened, but spending 2 weeks with my father was a journey. It was foul smelling, but it was also beautiful and hilarious and fun. And at the end of the day, it did connect us. And I think that's the most important thing there, because so many people, myself included, have an opportunity to heal this kind of ancestral wounding or these ancestral burdens that we carry from our caregivers. Some of us aren't in a position to do so because they've already passed on. But for those of us who are, I encourage all of you, especially if you haven't had a stellar relationship with your parents, it might be worth it to just see what you can do to mend that while you still have the chance to do so. It's just an invitation. It isn't anything that I am selling or preaching, but I think that that's an avenue for a lot of healing and soul repair. I don't know, whatever you want to call it, but it's hard. It's hard work. And I think that's why a lot of people are discouraged from doing that, myself included. Because you have to face things, not just about your parents that you may dislike, but also about yourself. You might have to look at some uncomfortable truths. There were moments while we were together where I caught myself scolding my father as though he was the child and I was the parent. And I think he deserved it. His actions were more than unsavory. He had defecated violently all over a public toilet and left that bathroom in complete and utter disarray while there was a line of elderly people behind him and I in this Portuguese toilet. So I went in and saw the avalanche that he had left in the toilet, and I was shocked that, this is a good aside here, because in America, I've noticed, having spent 8 years now living abroad, there is a certain toilet etiquette that differs from America. In America, generally, when you walk into any kind of public restroom, it is a horrific scene. It is like a Jackson Pollock painting. There are wads of toilet paper everywhere. Sometimes toilet bowls are overflowing. They're full to the brim. It's like a septic tank burst when you walk into some of the public toilets in America, because there isn't a shared sense of togetherness or fellowship or solidarity. So it's a kind of hyper individualistic culture where everybody just really cares about their own experience. The bathroom isn't their responsibility. That's someone else's problem to deal with once they're gone. But in Europe, it's a little bit different. And this isn't across the board. This is just a sweeping generalization. Of course, there have been times that I've gone into bathrooms and they have been caked with feces and perfumed with the foul, rank stink of old urine. Yeah, this happens. But the cleanliness of the bathrooms here are leagues above the US. And so when I look at this from a distance, can I blame my father? I don't know. But I did. And so I chastised him after and said, did you find the bathroom like that? I had to go in there and clean up after you. You didn't see the shit brush that was there. You didn't want to put the toilet paper that you lined the bowl with in the thing and flush it. Did you find it this way? And his response was, what? It's a public restroom, which confirms my hypothesis. So I explained to him that that's not how things are done here. This is a shared toilet. So it's everyone's responsibility to take care of it. And I think that's a beautiful metaphor for life and for the world, right? We're all on this planet together. And we can either perceive it and approach it through the lens of this is mine to take and extract from and do what I want with, or this is mine to care for, nurture, maintain, and respect while it's here because it's not just mine, it's ours. And I'm not proud of how I expressed myself to him. I was condescending. I was judgmental. I was angry. I was frustrated because I literally had to clean up his shit in the bathroom. But what else are we here for if not to clean up each other's shit in the bathroom? If not to clean up your father's shit in the bathroom. We're here to help each other, to talk to one another, to not just clean up our literal shit that we left in the bathroom, but our metaphorical shit, our spiritual shit, the filth that we're simmering in. And having that conversation with him, I think, was a way to try to begin cleaning up that shit. And I didn't do it perfectly. I'm not proud of how I conducted myself, but I was able to reflect on that and feel that I could have been kinder, I could have been more compassionate, I could have been more understanding. And there were many moments like that where I lost my temper, where I was a little bit too unkind or inconsiderate. And the interesting thing about that was that I was able to see in my tone and my voice him when I was a kid. And so this weird echo from back in time traveled through me and maybe landed in his heart in a different way now. Maybe he even noticed that and said, yeah, I see a bit of myself in him. And maybe he also felt some disappointment or shame or sadness in having left or planted those seeds in me. So it was really interesting. It was insightful. I was trying to approach it from a more mindful perspective and really engage him and have him tell stories and accept him for who he was. Because when I was a kid, our relationship was combative. He was a drunk. He was on drugs. He was violent, verbally, psychologically, in so many ways, physically at times. And we didn't have a good relationship. And I, as a child, kind of always blamed him for that. It's like, why did you have kids if you weren't ready to do it? Why do you behave the way you do? I had a lot of expectations. I had a lot of unfulfilled or unmet needs. And I carried those with me for a big portion of my life. And it took me a while to start to see my father as a person, as someone who was doing his best, but his best didn't live up to my expectations, and that's okay. I think many of us probably have that experience with our parents. And for me, there came a point where I started to try to let that go. And I was able to see him from a different perspective, just as a person. And I think all people deserve dignity and respect and care and love, and maybe deserve isn't the right word. I have a problem with that word in general, but I think we can give those things to one another and probably should. Should is another tricky and challenging word, but you get what I mean, I hope. And so I was really fortunate to have this experience and to spend some time together. And I even told him that. I shared these things with him. And I said that when I was a kid, I tended to defend mom and take her side, as you were the big, strong, yelling, violent male. And so I felt it was my duty to protect my family and protect my loved ones and intervene and get between the two of you, which no child should have to do, really. The repercussions for that type of experience where you don't feel safety in your household, where you can't trust the emotional state of a caregiver, where that person may explode into unpredictable violence, be calm and kind one moment and erratic and unstable the next. It erodes a sense of stability and safety. And that type of relationship or that type of encounter over time affects us on a cellular level. It doesn't just affect us behaviorally, but it literally affects the cells in our body and puts them into a heightened state of vigilance where even to this day, I'm always, I would say I almost never feel safe. And that doesn't mean that there's a corresponding reason for that. You know, I might just have a general sense of unease or anxiety or discomfort that's just pervading my experience, just embedded into my consciousness. And there have been moments where I've realized that that wasn't there, like after a holotropic breathwork workshop one time, after being in a void state where I was completely dissolved and I was in a peaceful embryonic womb state for a few hours. When I came back to reality and started to get my bearings again, it took a good 2 or 3 minutes before that feeling of fear or that lack of safety settled back in my body. So that sensation is just there and it can lift. You know, it can visit other places at times, maybe after a community building circle or a psychedelic experience or having a beer or smoking a joint can kind of break the hinges off of the heart's door and just let out or let in that sense of comfort. Let out the discomfort and let in the comfort. And yeah, that's just, my point is that that's just there on a cellular somatic level, like in my neurochemistry, in my hormonal system, in the fascia and tissues of my body. There is a discomfort and a fear and an unease that was woven into it as I grew up, which may or may not differ from something traumatic that happens later in life. Because had a person grown up in a stable environment with the proper care and safety, perhaps you build a container that's resilient with a strong foundation that if something happens later, like some kind of trauma, like violence or an accident or a loss or something intrusive or disturbing, perhaps that doesn't creep deep into the somatic layers of the body and root down. You know, there's enough time to respond to that, to maybe do some healing before it makes its way through the entire system. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud here. And I'm comparing that to the type of trauma or repeated exposure to a lack of safety and wounding that happens recurrently as someone is young in these formative years as they're growing older. It seems to me that there could be a difference between those things, but this is just speculative. My point here is to say that doing that type of healing, you know, trying to talk to a loved one, trying to understand them, trying to forgive them, trying to connect to them as a person instead of as a parent, I think has value. Yeah, I mean, it did for me. So I just wanted to share that despite the challenges, despite how hard it was, despite how many times I failed at being the person that I wanted to be, it still gave me so many tests and so many opportunities and so many occasions to rise to that it's a really fertile ground for doing that kind of work. And I attribute my mixed success to community building, which I want to transition to now. But before I transition, I want to include a couple brief stories from my father, because I took it upon myself to record 3 hours of content with him at various locations in Portugal to try to capture the spirit of this time together and to try to capture some of himself, because he's a storyteller. He's lived a very storied life. He's a kind of street guy. He was always rough. He was rolling with biker gangs, and he was a construction worker, and he was in prison, you know, this kind of personality. So I wanted to share a little bit of him here so you could get a sense of what this may have been like. And I hope to dedicate an even longer episode to him where I put some of these stories together to try and string through a narrative to give you little vignettes into his life, because I think that would be interesting. He's an interesting guy that has had interesting experiences, and yeah, that would be fun. So stay tuned for something like that. But for now, here's a couple little stories.
Yeah, I had a guy try to stick me up. I was selling pot and shit. And big dude. And I had like $1,000 on me. And that was like back in 1974, when $1,000 was a decent amount of money, you know? And this motherfucker got close with the gun. He put it in my, close enough for me to grab it, you know? If the guy would have been a couple feet away, I wouldn't have made the attempt, you know? But being he had it so close, I was like, fuck this, man. I ain't giving it 1,000. And I snatched it off. And then he started like acting like a little bitch. He was like, oh man, I can't even rob anyway. I'm such a fuck up, a loser. And I'm looking at him like,
You're holding the gun and pointing it
yeah,
at
yeah. And I got the gun. I take the bullets out of it. And he's like, he's a big juice, this fucking guy. So I'm like, look, do me a favor. Hey, take your fucking gun back and get the fuck out of here, because I was at a park where maybe 100, maybe 50 feet away was all my friends. So I went, see, I was alone. Like I strayed away. This guy pulled me away. Like I thought he wanted to buy weed.
So he was posing as a client. And
Right,
then all of a sudden,
right. Then he turned on me. So I went back into the crowd with, so, you know, he wasn't going to try to come back in again, you know. But, yeah, we really didn't carry no guns up there. At that time, it was still, you know, people fought with their hands or sticks or bats. You know, the heavy duty guys that used to rob the cocaine deals and shit like that. They used to come up from home. They used to come up and shoot people, and yeah, it was like it's called the Purple Gang.
purple guy.
Purple Gang, yeah. They even the mob used them to do their dirty deeds, but even the mob was scared of them because they killed a lot of people. You know, they
And what was their deal? Like, where were they based and what were their.
well, they were based in like the Pelham Bay Country Club area, Tremont area, but basically they came from Harlem. But some of them, their fathers or uncles were made guys in the mob. Some of them were half Italian, so they couldn't be inducted in the mob, but they worked with the mob. You know, they were like, you know, they just might as well have been, they were their own gang, their own mobsters. And they used to kill mobsters too. They didn't give a fuck, you know, so they were pretty feared. There's one guy in jail now. He's actually, they consider him a serial killer. He killed so many people. When I was in jail, I was in the bullpen again. So my friend Louis DeSoja says, listen, you know, when you're in prison with, you know, other people, they'll be giving cigarettes away. They'll take advantage of you. Just, you know. So now what happened, by the time you get to the bullpen, everybody's out of cigarettes. And everybody smoked back then. So I was in my cell before I went to the bullpen alone. And this guy comes walking by who was a cop. And I recognized him from the schoolyard. And he recognized me. And I didn't know he was a cop. So he was like, yo, Mikey, what do you need? You know? He says, I'll go across the street to the deli, man. I'll get you an egg sandwich. I'll get you a pack of cigarettes. You know, I'll get you a soda, whatever the fuck you want. So I was like, he hooked me up. So now I go into the fucking bullpen with a full pack of cigarettes. And people are jonesing like a motherfucker. So now there's these two guys in there. They're like Samoans. They're fucking Puerto Rican. I don't know what the fuck they were. So they just did 20 years in Attica for a double homicide. Now they got
So
caught.
a nice couple of guys.
So they got caught with a pistol on them down Hunts Point, getting a blowjob from the hookers down there. And being they had the gun on them, they were on probation, parole, whatever. They got rearrested. They were going to Rikers Island, and everybody knew them. So I light up a cigarette, and the guy's like, "Yo, man, let me get a cigarette." And I go like this, "Nope." And they went off. Them two guys were going, two of them were talking together. They were going crazy. So I'm like, oh shit. Second about man. So I just smoked a cigarette, keep my mouth shut. And then like, says to myself, everybody in there was looking at me now. Everybody in the motherfucking place. So it's like, I can't make enemies. If I gotta go to Rikers Island, these guys got a lot of pull here. So he was having a conversation, and I butted in on their conversation. So he didn't like diss me or anything. So I was like, you know what? So I says, here's a cigarette for you and your brother. You split it. There was some other guys like this with their tongue out. So I was like, oh, you two guys split this one. You guys split that one. And, and then everybody was like, chill. They got, they were going through their cigarette withdrawal. They like, thank God, you know what I mean? So, in prison, it's kind of that way, but not in the bullpen. So, the information he gave me was, incorrect if you're in the bullpen. Because you're still like not really, in a crew, this and that. So you should share your shit a little bit, but don't be giving it up, because then people will try to push up on you. Get the fuck out of my. So I made the statement like, listen, I got the balls to say no. So, don't think you're going to push up on me. And then later on, I just, listen, I'm not a scumbag, but don't think anybody's going to just take my shit,
Yeah.
So, I think, it was like, I wasn't really a big fucking guy. So these guys were like monsters, And,
But
Right.
that's a prison etiquette. That's for anybody who's finding themselves in a bullpen. That's the way.
So now on to the second half of this episode, which is about community building, which, as I said before, I attribute some of my ability to be more tolerant, have more patience, be more accepting, be in deeper community, not only with my father, but with myself, because you need to be able to go to that place with your internal community as well as your external community. I subscribe to the internal family systems conceptions of self, where we are multiple, we are porous, things pass through us. We have many different persons inside of us. And that inner community can be in chaos. It may not be deep. We may not be so familiar with ourselves. We may be in a state of pseudo-community with our own self. And if we are, it's harder to connect to our needs. It's harder to connect to our feelings. And when that's the case, how can we really connect to anyone else? What the community building process invites is a sort of emptying, so that you make more space inside of yourself to hold and receive others. And for people who may be new listeners, who perhaps have never heard me talk about community building, I should give it a little bit of an introduction, which is going to be hard because it's like trying to describe a drug experience. If you've never experienced anything like this, it would be like trying to tell you what acid is like and you've never taken a psychedelic or smoked marijuana. It's going to be very difficult. But.
Hey, boys and girls, you want to eat blotter?
We want orange sunshine.
What's the magic word?
Please, Miss Lucy.
Okay, now remember, if you get scared at any point, pet the purple pigeon, okay? Now, Sally, what do you see?
Wow, Miss Lucy, I can see music. It's all like colors everywhere.
Very good. And Timmy, what about you?
Miss Lucy, I ate a piece of orange sunshine. It was a little piece of paper. And then I went outside and fed a gopher a daisy. And we laughed because it was so funny when the flowers started screaming.
Beautiful, Timmy. Has anyone seen Stanley?
I'm over here, Miss Lucy.
Oh, what are you doing there sitting under your desk?
If I come out, they'll see me.
Who?
Shh, be quiet. The people out there, they're watching and listening. I can feel their ears on us. I can't explain it, but they're everywhere and nowhere, like a vast cosmic wave of consciousness, which we are too.
Please pet the pigeon, Stanley.
But I am the pigeon, Miss Lucy. I realized that 9 hours ago after I looked in the mirror and watched my face melt into the sink. Everything is everything, don't you sense it? We are the first, second, and the last. The beginning and the end. The purple pigeon of paradox peers into the abyss, and the abyss peers back with its blinking pigeon eye. The color is orange, and it tastes like an orange. I can hear it, can't you?
Still, I think it's possible to get a little bit of a taste or a faint impression of what it might be like. Essentially, it's a group process, but it's an emergent process. So it isn't as structured as a normal workshop might be, where there's a lot of information, there's a lot of guiding and hand-holding and facilitation, and you're being trained in something with clear outcomes and objectives and a path to do it. It's nothing like that. To me, it's like a ritual. It's a ceremonial space, and it's, in many ways, I think, an initiation. It's discomforting, it's hard, it's challenging, it's painful, but it's also deeply connective in a way that I hadn't experienced until my first time experiencing this a few years ago. And during that experience, I felt something opening in me that was difficult to describe or even understand. I think experiences like those take time to understand. And I remember after that experience, it took me weeks to begin to integrate. I was exhausted for a week while I guess certain things were rewiring inside of me. I was realizing certain masks that I had been wearing or certain aspects of self weren't really true to who I was. And I was having a kind of reorganization of priorities and interests and values. And it was a seismic shift. It was a rupture. It was an event that there is a before that and an after in my life. And I could say that honestly, but I guess I haven't really told you what it is. So what's so potent about that? What's so powerful? The thing that's seductive about it is that it's also very soft and very inviting. One of the guidelines is that participation can be verbal or nonverbal. So you could literally sit there for 3 or 4 days, however long the workshop lasts, and not say a word. And that's okay. Basically, pretty much everything is okay inside the circle. Any emotion is okay. Any story is okay. Any gift of your own vulnerability is okay. There are some things that are not okay if you're trying to harm someone or you're talking about harming someone or it's committing a crime. Of course, these things wouldn't be okay, but I've never seen that happen. And generally, the spaces themselves take on an energetic quality that is unique to the composition of the group. So every group is different, and the way that they move through the phases of this process are different. And this is why it's emergent, because we can't predict what will happen. We can't explain how it works. It's very mysterious. It has a kind of ancient cosmic feel to it where you're just living organisms together in a space, being living human beings in all that means, right? So it's not just the beauty and the fun and the levity and the lightness. It's also the pain and the sorrow and the grief and the brokenness, your inadequacies and fears and shame. Like all of that is there if you want to touch it. And that's the thing. It invites you to meet yourself in shared silence and wait for something to move you. And effectively what you're doing is you're sitting there with a group of strangers and you don't know what to do because the facilitators are only guides. So there's not much hand-holding. The facilitators make recommendations sometimes. They'll reflect some observations back. The role of the facilitator primarily is to say what we see. And there's a great book about this process. If you want to really dig in and explore it and learn more about it, it's called The Different Drum. And it's by Scott Peck, who is the creator of this method. And it borrows from older traditions, I'm sure some of the traditions of native peoples, because there's something about a circle that's this archetypal, ancient, sacred shape, right? In the circle, everybody is equal. Everybody sees each other at the same time. It's a place where it becomes difficult to hide. And much like a psychedelic experience, it tends to surface those things that are hiding. It wants you to confront the aspects of your existence or your identity or your pain or your unique incarnation that you haven't been looking at. Maybe old wounds from your childhood that want to be healed. Maybe a deep regret, or maybe a loss or a grief or a sorrow that you haven't sat long enough with, or one that's recurrent and needs to be sat with again. It's hard to say what your process might be because it changes. I've been in these circles as a participant many times, and each circle is different. A different thing emerges. Maybe in my first circle, in my first workshop, I remember a deep share about my own loneliness and my own sense of not fitting in anywhere, not belonging anywhere. And, it brought me to tears to really feel that move through you, to really touch it and be in contact with it, to be in relation to a deep-seated pain is no easy task, right? This is hard work. And this is a space where that work can happen, because I think it's important for that work to happen in the presence of others, of a group, because a lot of our wounding and a lot of the stuff that we hold isn't just personal or individual, it's collective. Collective hearts need to heal those kind of wounds. It's really different, because I've been in therapy, I've sat with therapists and spoken to them one-on-one, and maybe I would have even shared something similar to the therapist, that I feel kind of disconnected and separated and isolated in my space, and I don't know what I'm doing in my life. But saying that one-on-one in a clinical environment where a person is just looking at you and nodding their head and you don't really feel held or seen is different than being in a room full of 20 to 40 people who are all there holding you in silence with tears in their eyes or kind smiles on their lips or just expressions of rapt attention, really seeing and hearing you and feeling seen and heard in your vulnerability after you've taken a risk to show yourself and expose yourself in that way. It's really frightening because you could be rejected in doing so. So when you do it and you aren't rejected, and instead people seem to embrace you more and they see the more whole, full picture of who you are, is a really cathartic, really powerful thing. And that's the kind of space that these circles provide. So for me, it's a gift every time I have the opportunity to hold one of these sessions. And it's a gift to participate in one as a participant. But in some ways, it's a bigger gift to facilitate them because it requires so much energy. It's the hardest thing I've ever done. And I used to work for Apple when I was in San Francisco in a very high stress job. One day I came in and my manager comes in and just throws Scott Forstall's phone on my desk. And at that time, Scott Forstall was the head of software at Apple. So this is like a super high ranking C-suite guy. And if I don't figure out what's going on with his phone, maybe I'm not going to have a job next week. So it was super high stress, super demanding. We'd be working abusive hours. They'd be exploiting us. We'd be working for 16 hours for, 2 or 3 months straight ahead of a release to get things out the door. So this was high pressure, high stakes, really difficult job. And this work that I'm doing now, this more emotional, spiritual, mystical, strange, emergent group work with people about, the rawness of the human experience is so much more raw and real and rewarding and important than that work could ever be. So I'm really happy doing it, but it's hard. It requires all of my emotional, intellectual, spiritual energy. It's every ounce of presence and awareness. So I haven't done anything like it ever. And each time it feels like it could be the last time because it's so difficult. Each time there's a crisis where there's a sense of doubt, where it's like, am I fit for this work? Am I supposed to be doing this? Because it's so hard and it's not clear to me. There's always this moment where the group seems like they're not going to make it, like they're not going to submit themselves to the process and move deep into the deeper levels or touch at that fourth phase, which is community. And I guess I should talk about these phases for a moment. There's 4 of them, and groups generally move through all of them. The first one is pseudo-community. The second one is chaos. The third one is emptiness. And the fourth one is community. And just to tell you a little bit about each phase, the first phase is just kind of light. It's common. Most people are in this phase at work or in their relationships, where it can be fun and surface level and polite. And people mostly pretend that they're kind of the same and they have a lot in common and they have a shared story. And it's pleasant. But the dark side of that phase is that it sort of hides the things that are beneath the surface. So elephants in the room start to emerge there. Or people will behave as though they've done the work to be in a community, but they haven't actually moved through the hard, challenging aspects of chaos or emptiness to actually be seasoned enough to be in a community. And so there's nothing wrong with pseudo-community. It's each phase, there's nothing wrong with any of them. They all serve a purpose. And this is a good getting to know you phase. The next phase, which is chaos, is where differences begin to emerge. In the chaos phase, we start to want to fix each other. So I want to give you advice. I want to tell you why what you're doing or what you think isn't as good as what I think. I want to teach you something. Maybe I want to preach. I want to talk about how much I've learned or whatever it is. And this starts to cause chaos because people now notice their differences and they say, okay, you're not like me. And I don't know if I like you. I don't know if I want to go deeper into this process with you. You're kind of a fucking dick. So this is a very challenging phase and the pace becomes erratic. It can be hostile, like people could start arguing with one another. It can really feel like it's spinning out of control and people don't like this phase. So generally they try to organize or strategize their way out of it and go back to the safety and comfort of pseudo-community. And groups are very creative in how they do that, but it's a reflection of how we do that with ourselves. It's why we don't like to sit in meditation. It's why we don't like to go to therapy. It's why we don't like to be vulnerable and talk about our problems, because it requires work and effort and it's uncomfortable. And it's easier to not do any of that. So the benefit, the useful side of this chaotic phase is that it reveals these things. It reveals important differences. It surfaces elephants in the room. It compels us to look at the things that we're not looking at and try to work with them, try to metabolize them, try to move through them. And if you're able to do that, you move into this phase of emptiness. And the only way to deal with those chaotic emotions and all of the stress and worry and pain is into and through emptiness. And in order to do that, you need to be vulnerable. You need to take a risk. You need to sit with heavy, real emotions. the ones that are moving through you and affecting you at that moment. Because there's a difference in talking about something that's easy to talk about, a trauma that you've reported many times is no longer risky for you. If you're sitting there rehearsing this, or it feels familiar, like something you always tell people, you're probably not really moved to speak. Being moved to speak comes from a really deep, mysterious place. Sometimes I'm moved to speak about something that I don't even know what I'm going to say when my mouth opens, but my heart is pounding, my palms are sweaty, something is happening to me energetically on a somatic level. So in the emptiness phase, this is where that's happening. And the useful thing about that is that it really lets people see you. People understand you. They come to know you in a deep, intimate way. And often in doing so, they come to know themselves better because they see what kind of pains they have inside. And that was my experience my first time when people were sharing and I was going, oh my God, like that sounds exactly like the thing that I tell myself about me, or I've said that same phrase to myself, or I wrestle with that same uncertainty or doubt or pain. And it's deeply connective in a psychedelic way. I've done a lot of psychedelics in my life, and this work, the experiences I've had sober, rival the kind of psychedelic experiences I've had on a dose of mushrooms or acid or MDMA even. So it's really potent, really powerful stuff that can happen because you're in a field of people and they're all opening themselves up and you're building a container out of that energy. So in that shared field, as the group is trying to shoulder these burdens that people are putting down in the circle, it becomes more resilient and tougher, and people are able to let go of increasingly difficult things. So this is a very valuable, very useful stage. And the facilitators can only guide the group to this stage. The group has to hang out there long enough and sit with that discomfort long enough and empty themselves enough so that there can be a visitation from some sort of deep cosmic energy. Something spiritual, something mysterious. And it feels like it's suffused with peace and harmony and love and compassion and fellowship. And it's a distinct feeling when it happens, when the group starts to shift into this last phase. And that moment may happen briefly. It may be there for a moment. It may be there for a day. It may be there for hours. Who knows? But often it's palpable. And it doesn't mean everybody feels it at the same time, because the way that it works is that the group is made of individuals. And any given individual could be in one phase. Just because the group isn't emptying, I may be there in chaos, or I may be there in pseudo-community, like I'm not willing to go into the emptying phase. And so once there's a critical mass of enough people, that's when the phase starts to shift for the group as an organism. So it's a really heady, tricky thing to talk about, and that's like a high-level sense of what's happening in these phases and what the group is doing, but there's so much to it. Yeah, it's a lifelong process and journey where my mentor's been doing this for 40 years, and I would imagine that it doesn't ever get old. There's always something new to learn. The group always does something unique. Each group has its own norms and qualities and behaviors that are its own. And I'm different every time I enter a circle, so there's something new to learn about myself. And the people that are there in that circle provide opportunities for me to notice different things, because my relationship with each of these people is going to be different depending who they are and where I am at that time. So it's a really beautiful process. And Asha and I had the opportunity to do it on our own for the first time. And all of the other previous times we were with a senior facilitator who was there for us to kind of anchor with. But this time we were completely alone and there was no one to save us. And this was a really different kind of experience because you feel the real weight of this, like the training wheels are off. And it was challenging. The group size was much bigger than we were accustomed to. the group was an existing group instead of a group of strangers, which is usually the case. When you might not understand, you might say, well, why does that matter? What's the difference there? It's an important difference because when people are strangers, in many ways, it's easier to share certain things because you don't really know these people. You know you don't have to see them again. And so there's a certain kind of liberating quality where you can share more freely. When it's people you know that you have to continue working with, or you have a history with, maybe there's some conflict or there's some unresolved issues between you, it may be harder for you to listen to that person when they share. Maybe you don't trust them. Maybe you don't feel comfortable enough to be vulnerable in front of them because you think that they may use it against you in the future, or whatever the reason is. So it's much harder for an existing group to do this work than it is for a group of strangers. And in this particular group, they had their spiritual advisor or their spiritual guide in the group as well. So this, as you can imagine, might make it even more difficult to share. Because if I share something that I'm ashamed of, or I show a certain kind of weakness, or I'm real in a way that could compromise my position or my status within this group in front of this person, I might not be so inclined to share. So there were a lot of interesting dynamics at play in this workshop. There were some people who didn't really want to be there. And most of the time when we do this, everyone wants to be there because we organize it and they apply and we interview them and they come. This time we weren't organizing, we were just invited to hold the space for an existing group. So some of them really didn't understand what they were signing up for. And I felt a lot of compassion and care for these people because I could understand how difficult that would be. If you didn't know you were signing up for this and you have to sit in a basement with 40 people in silence or cry for a few days, that's heavy. That's a hard thing to do. So yeah, it was a challenging workshop. We got through it, but we had this moment, as many facilitators do, where you wonder, is the group willing to do this work? And it's okay if they aren't. Every group is different. There's no guarantee of where they will end, but you always care about the group and you want to see them try and you want to see them get something out of it. And so in the Bible, there's this, I'm not Christian, but I know of this famous biblical moment in the Bible where Christ is on the cross and he's screaming out, "Father, why have you forsaken me?" And in the Bible, this is called the cry of dereliction. And as a facilitator, for me, I had this moment with Asha. We were there in the cemetery and things weren't really going the way that we wanted them to. And we had one more day left and it was an abbreviated day. So we were having some doubts as to whether or not the group was going to get there. And there was this sense of like, we've done everything right. Like we've been here, we've given them the guidelines, we've held them, we've reflected back to them. We're sitting in this process with them, we're holding them, we're doing the best we can. Where is this force, this spiritual, energetic force? Where is this cosmic, beautiful container of love and peace and fellowship and acceptance and all the beautiful things we know about this process? Where is it? And so it was a challenging moment for us to have, but in a way a beautiful moment because it inspired us, or it led us to this point where it's like, well, listen, we don't control this group. The group controls itself. We are just here to hold space for them, be there for them, and give them this container to use. And we don't even create the container, they do. So they are in control of everything, and we can just guide them. I don't have kids, but I guess in a way it would be like having children, where it's like you want the best for them. You want to teach them things. You want to impart what you know so that they have a better time than you did. But at the end of the day, you can't make them do anything. You have some influence, but you don't have control. And so we had to surrender and just let go of our expectations for the group and just say, you know what? If this is what the group is capable of, if this is where their inner healing wisdom takes them at this time, then that's their journey. Like, trust in this process that they're going where they can go and they're going to get what they need. And it is what it is, and it's okay. And magically, after we had that experience, the group started to do the work. And that was the really strange thing about it, was that letting go of wanting them to succeed has this paradoxical outcome of removing an obstacle for them. And they were able to sink deeper into the process. And by the last day, they were in emptiness. Maybe, again, maybe not everybody, but enough members of the group that I felt this vague, right towards the end, in the final minutes of the circle, I felt this vague sense of presence of something, like a faint aroma, like a floral bouquet that you just get a subtle whiff of, and just as you smell it, it's kind of gone. Or maybe like a faint whisper of something, or a gentle breeze just moving through the room. Something very subtle was there. And I think that was a sign from whatever is behind this process that, this is where we're supposed to be. This is what we're supposed to be doing. And it was beautiful. I was moved to tears in that moment. And I didn't expect that. I didn't plan for that. It just happened. And opening yourself up to those energies and being sensitive and listening and sitting in the silence to see what's there, I think this is what's at the heart of meditation, right? So this work is often described as a group meditation or group contemplation, because in this world, the collective takes priority. They take precedence. In our modern world, there's so much emphasis on the individual. There's so much fixation on my liberation and my needs and my development. And I think this comes at great cost, because when you look at ancient traditions, that was never the point. The point was that you would have an initiation and you would be gifted something. You would find some gift that was often corresponding to your own inner wound, and you would bring that back to the community, to your people, to the collective, to the group, and you would give that gift to the group. Your purpose was to be in service to the group, not to empower yourself, liberate yourself, exalt yourself. Your purpose was to discover how you can be in service to the group. What can I bring to the group? How can I help? What's my gift? What do I have to offer? Not how can I be the first trillionaire? Not how can I get my ass to Mars? Not how can I build a bunker to insulate myself from the coming economic and social collapse of modern civilization as we know it, as we know people like Zuckerberg, Bezos, and Musk are all interested in. This is a soul sickness. This is not what we're here for. So I don't know where exactly I'm going with this at the moment. I'm kind of off in the weeds a bit, and maybe that's a signal that it's time to wrap this up, because I've spoken at length about community building and this experience with my dad in Portugal. But just for some final words, it's important work to empty yourself. And I think what I hope to achieve with this podcast is that it is a sort of confessional space. It's a space that I can share what's on the top of my mind, what's in my heart, what I'm going through, what I'm thinking about, in the hopes that it resonates with someone else and that maybe it offers help to someone. Maybe people listen to this and they go, yeah, I had a fucked up relationship with my dad too, and I wish that I could do something about it. Hey, maybe I could. Maybe I'll just give him a phone call. Or I've tried therapy before and it wasn't so great for me. Maybe I should look into some group work. Let's explore that. Because we have these crazy bodies. For a society that's so obsessed with mind and intellect and control, the body is there to remind us that there are entire worlds there that do not run on intellect, control, and order. Try to control your heartbeat. Try to stop breathing. Try to sit still for 2 minutes and not have your mind think anything. It's not how it works. The body is rhythmic and moves and dances and has all of these mysterious, nuanced, emergent qualities that require work and patience and stillness and exploration and mystery and weird shit. So that's what I want to communicate here, is lean into the weird shit. Do things that are maybe a little unorthodox. Explore those liminal, weird, tainty realms. As always, be good to one another, and I'll be back next time. Thank you for passing through today. Yeah, you, dear listener. Thank you for your support, for your attention, for spending some time with me and this episode's guest. If you're enjoying this content, please subscribe, rate it, like it, tell your friends about it, buy a billboard somewhere next to a highway promoting it. I mean, I'm kidding, of course, but your support really does mean a lot to me. So thank you for listening, and I will talk to you next time.